Hey everybody, it's Eugene here and welcome to Click 3D. As you know, this is a program where we talk about a lot of 3D technologies, things like hardware, software. We even get to interview people and we talk about specific applications. Now today what I'm going to be doing is doing a bloodstain pattern analysis. And so this is an area of origin analysis inside of FARO Zone 3D. So there's a lot to this sort of background work and sort of information that you might need in the background. And I'm going to be focusing on the most important parts, which is just sort of which buttons you press and the basic process of running through this. The background knowledge stuff I'm not going to go through because it would probably be a very long video. But for those of you that are doing bloodstain pattern analysis and you want to know, hey, what can you do? This might be a good video for you to follow up on and just kind of get the basic workflow. So what you see on my screen here is actually what I'm going to try and get to. So I have a point cloud here. So the background, the floor and the walls, that was scanned with a FARO S350 laser scanner. And then up on the wall, you see I've got these blue squares. Okay, this is just tape that I put up on the walls. But if I zoom in here, you'll start to see that I've got photographs that are aligned on the wall. And so that's part of the process, is aligning a photograph to what you have in the laser scanner data on the wall. And I'll talk more about that. And of course, what we end up with here is this little ellipsoid shape, and it gives us some results here. So we're going to do this from scratch. And before I get started, there are a couple of things that I should mention. And that is that you do not need a laser scanner to do the analysis inside of FARO Zone 3D. If you wanted to do this 100% manual, there is a way to do that. Now, it means that there's a couple of little things you have to do beforehand when you're doing the documentation. I'm not going to cover that in this video. I'm just going to work with the point cloud data from the laser scanner. But I just want you to be aware that if you didn't have a laser scanner, it's not a problem. There's other things you can do with just basic tools like a tape measure and your camera. Now, the other thing too is that you have to know what kind of bloodstain pattern you're working with. And so area of origin is a type of analysis that deals with impact patterns. And so the analyst has to be able to recognize what kind of pattern is actually there. And is it just one pattern? Is it two patterns? So you don't want to confound multiple patterns together. You want to basically isolate the one individual pattern. Now, you can work on multiple patterns. So if there was 2 impacts or 3 impacts, you'd have to know which ones were which and basically isolate them. So stain selection, okay, the little blood stains themselves, which are on the wall, is also very important. And so knowing where they are, knowing which ones to include and which ones to exclude, and also how to mark them as well, they are all important factors inside of, running this kind of thing. So, an analyst that has a bit more background, it would be better for them to do this type of analysis. And if you're sort of new at it, then you have to be careful, because interpreting the results. So if you look at what I have here, these lines, and then looking at this little ellipsoid shape and that sort of thing is also very, very important. So not just looking at the results and reporting the results, but understanding what the errors might be. Okay, this is a very, very important thing inside of forensics. So I can run through the whole thing and show it to you, but please understand that there's a lot of background and other underlying factors that you need to consider. Okay, let's get going here. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to create a new project. I'm going to cancel out of this, import a point cloud, and this is just going to be an E57 file. So I'm going to go in, go to my files. Okay, so you can see I have an E57 file here. I have a photos folder, and I also have a converted FARO Zone point cloud. Now, normally when you start this from scratch, you're not going to have this FARO Zone point cloud, this FZPC file. So I'm going to open up the E57 file, and it's going to ask me what units it's in, and it is in meters. So I'm just going to click OK. So what FARO Zone 3D is going to do right now is take that point cloud, that E57 file, and it's going to convert it to its own format, which is the FZPC file that you saw. So it'll probably just overwrite what was actually there. Okay, so there's the point cloud. You can have a look at it. You can see, I can zoom in and, have a look at the points here. Now, sometimes what I'll do is I will make some little adjustments to this point cloud. And I should mention, if I zoom out here, you'll see that I have my main axes running across here and then running across here. And the point cloud happens to land just so that the origin point, the 0, 0, 0, is in this bottom corner. Now, that didn't happen by chance. That happened because I set up this point cloud beforehand so it lands nice and square in the coordinate system inside of FARO Zone 3D. Now, there is a way to do that inside of FARO Zone 3D. I'm not going to get into it, but please be aware that when you bring a point cloud in, normally it's not perfectly square like this. Okay, it's probably upright because the scanner has an inclinometer, but it could be rotated in a number of different ways. It doesn't matter. You can run the analysis just the same, but I like to square it up so I understand exactly where my x-axis and my y-axis and my z-axis, where everything's sort of falling with respect to, for example, these walls and, you know, this direction here. So that's something that you need to consider before you bring the point cloud in. Now, in terms of settings for the point cloud, I'm just going to make some small adjustments here because you can see that when I get in really close, it starts to look, the points start to break apart. So I can go to the point cloud and I'm going to go to this point cloud tools, and there are some different options here, like for color and things like that. I'm not going to bother with that. The one that I'm going to use here is I'm just going to increase the point size to 2 instead of 1, and that is going to do it for me. So that's good. Okay. So bringing in the point cloud is step 1. Okay. And then the next step is going to be that you need to bring in images of the bloodstains. And so when you're photographing this, there's a whole, I guess, sort of talk that I could do just on how to photograph and how to label these things and that sort of thing. But I'm not going to get into that. But just know that you have to identify the bloodstain pattern and then decide on which groups of stains you want to take. Now, you can see in some of these, like over here, there's a few little bloodstains here. And then as we go down, there's more and more. You could do 1 photo per bloodstain, but you can take advantage of the fact that the camera has a high resolution and you can take groups of stains like this. So that is helpful. And actually, if we look at the photo of the overall wall here, you'll see that I've got a number of these different clusters that I've used. And I've got this blue box around here. Okay, this little tape that I've placed. In the past, you might use a ruler, like something that's up on the wall here, or sometimes you can use little reference markers. And this blue box, or this square box here that I'm using, as something that I've been starting to use because it solves a lot of problems at once. It solves the problem of lens distortion. It solves the problem of perspective distortion, where your camera is not perfectly 90 degrees to the surface. So using this is really, really helpful. Here's another view of the wall with all of the different bloodstains on the wall. But also, if I go through the individual photos, you'll see this is photo B. Now, I don't know if you can tell, but there's a little bit of a bend here. Okay, so we're getting a little bit of lens distortion here. And sometimes if I go to like different images, maybe like this one, like on A, it may not be perfectly square. There's a little bit of perspective distortion, the way the lines bend. So here, for example, these are all things that you can fix in a program like Photoshop or GIMP. And what we're doing is we're taking the photograph that's been distorted and bringing it back to what it matches in reality. Now, the dimensions of the inside here are known to me. So this is like a 20 by 20 centimeter square. I think you can see it here. We've got some dimensions here. And when I set it up, I actually set it up quite accurately so that I know what these are. But if you have a laser scanner point cloud behind you, you actually don't even know or don't need to know what the scale is of the photographs. Okay. So basically, if you use this method and you use a square box, or just with tape or a scale or something like that, it becomes very, very helpful. So what I've done is I have some images which are corrected. Okay. So these are the images that we're going to be using, and you can see that they've been cleaned up. They're a little more square. This is A. Okay, so I've removed a lot of the little distortions and little things like that. So they're generally nice and square. And this one too. Now, I could have cropped them to get rid of some of the stuff that's on the outside, but it's okay. I'll just use the most important part is what's on the inside here. Okay, so let's get going with this. And we're going to start with image A. And you'll see that once I do one of these, it will be pretty simple going forward. So what I'm going to do is I need to go to the power tools, because this is where the bloodstain tools are. And just down here, you'll see there's like a little blood spatter. So I'm going to click on that, and it's going to ask me for the photo. So I'm going to go right into my A image here, and I'm going to double click that. So then it asks me for the align mode. Now, by default, this could be set in the settings. Okay, there's a place where you can go check it and you can set it. And in different versions of FARO Zone 3D, it could change. But I'm going to use 3-point alignment. Okay, this one in the middle here. And once I bring this up, I'm going to maximize this window. So what it wants me to do now is pick 3 points on the photograph, and I'm going to pick the corresponding 3 points on the point cloud. Okay, so the way in which you pick them is also important. So typically what you're going to want to do is pick 2 points, which are generally horizontal, and then you're going to pick 1 point that is above or below. So you can see having this square here is also very helpful for the point picking. So I could pick, for example, a point here, and then a point here, and then 1 point below. But what I'm going to do is I'm just going to use the mouse wheel to zoom in, and I'm going to pick one over here. And okay, I'm going to do this a little bit fast because you don't want to watch me spend a lot of time here zooming in and picking, but you'll get the idea. So I'll pick that point, then I'm going to come down here. Or excuse me, I'm going to go up and I'm going to pick this corner here. Now, as soon as I pick this point, okay, I'm going to click it, you'll see it's going to disappear and it's going to take me to the point cloud. And this is where I'm going to be picking points up on the point cloud. So I'm going to pick one here. Okay, I'm going to pick one here in the same order. Let's say like that as best as I can. I'm doing this a little bit fast, but you'll get the idea. And one over here, let's say like that. You see, sometimes it's difficult to get to the exact point. So you got to pick the closest one that you can, and you'll see that the image gets placed. Okay, just as you see here. Now, oftentimes it doesn't align perfectly. Okay, so it's not perfect, but it's close. So you have to inspect these to make sure that it's, lining up properly. And a way to do that is to go into the settings here. This is the image is selected, so I get the properties for it. And there's a transparency slider here. So I'm going to move this and I'm going to have a look to see. Okay, so I can see there's a tiny bit of mismatch, but usually what I do is I look at the bloodstains and see how close they are. So I can make some modifications here. So this X, Y, and Z is the position of the image relative to this bottom left corner. And I can move this. So I can move it left, right, up and down, that sort of thing. So if I go to the settings here, I can do the same thing. In fact, I can actually roll the image in different directions too. But I think for this one, it's close enough. There'll probably be another one that if I set it up, it may not align all that well. But, you can drag from here, drag it up and down. There's a number of things you can do. But for the purposes of this video, I think this is okay. So now I could go right into marking the bloodstains on the image, but I like to do this sort of in sequence where I put all of the images up on the wall and then I go back and I will then start marking the bloodstains. So let me just go ahead and keep doing that. I'm going to do the exact same thing. I'm going to work with B. Let me bring that up, align 3D, and run through the same process. And you can see that it's pretty quick, right? It's pretty quick. And really what we're doing here is we're saying, hey, look, this 2D position on the photograph should match up with the 3D coordinates of the laser scan. So we're assigning 3D coordinates of the laser scan to the 2D pixel locations of the photograph. And when we do that, you're able to scale and orient the image up on the wall. So this is the next one. So you can see this one is off. Okay, so this one doesn't look correct. So let me go like this. Let me fade in and out. I'll probably leave this at about halfway. And you can see how it's going through the wall. And it just has to do with the way you click the points. Okay, so this is a good example of making an adjustment. You see how there's this ghosting effect with the bees and such like that? These are all things that I can manipulate. And the way I do that is I'm going to go into the settings that's over here. And I've got yaw, pitch, and roll. So you have to think about an aircraft. Okay, so they use these rotations like an aircraft. So yaw would be when an aircraft is flying forward, you use the rudder to turn left and right. And then pitch is going to be where you get the nose up and down. And then roll is where you go side to side this way. Okay, so I'm going to use the pitch to see if I can get this aligned. And a little trick here is sometimes because the wall isn't perfectly straight, or there's a little bit of noise or whatever on the point cloud or whatever, sometimes the image looks like it's sitting in front of the wall. Sometimes it's looking like it's behind the wall. And you can see here, the photograph is perfectly flat. The wall is not necessarily. So if I move to the back, I can often see what's going on. Sometimes it's on the back, sometimes it's on the front. It just depends on the point cloud you're working with. So here I can see I got a pitch of 2 degrees. So if I start using these controls that are on the right side, I make small rotations. Okay, you can see small little movements. If I use these ones here, I make larger, much more coarse movements. So now you can see I've adjusted the pitch, right? And I've got the B's kind of just above each other. Now, a quick way for me to do this is I can slide this up and down. So if I click on this, I'm going to go up and go down like this. Okay, oops, and I made a mistake because I inadvertently hit the right mouse button. So let me just adjust this again. You can see the B is fairly well aligned now there. That's good. Let me go around here. And let me use the transparency. I'm going to go back up here. And let me go back in and out. Okay. Again, it's a lot better. I would spend more time on this normally, and to make the adjustments, maybe move this a little bit more forward because it's sitting a little bit behind. But for the, what we're doing again here, it should be fine. So let's move on to image C here. And I'm just going to rinse and repeat. So you've already seen how I can rotate everything. So probably what I'll do is I'll just make this move quick, and you can watch me on fast forward here. Okay, so I have placed all 3 images up on the wall, and again, sometimes you see them on the front half or sometimes on the back. Again, this wall is not perfectly straight, but those photos when they come in are perfectly planar. So sometimes you have to zoom in to see them or go to the back side. No big deal. So what we're going to do now is we have to start marking the bloodstains. And so the way that we do that is if you just go back and click on one of the images, you'll have this properties box that pops up. And what I can do here is click on this edit droplets. So if I click on that, you'll see that I got the window that pops back up where I can start getting in and marking these little bloodstains. Now, there's a couple of ways that you can do this, and I found that the best way for me has been to just mark them manually. You zoom in really, really close and then draw the ellipse, and then everything works out. There is a semi-automatic way, which is this edge detection tool. So I'll show you how that works, and you can decide what happens. But I've found that I typically have to make some changes there anyway. So now some of these drops are not the best, but sometimes you just have to work with whatever it is that you got, and maybe a little bit higher resolution here would have been helpful. But I'm going to give it a go anyway. So I'm going to go edge detection, and you'll see that I have this little shaded circle here. When I use the scroll on the mouse, you see I zoom in and out. If I hold down the mouse wheel, or if I hit right mouse button, I can pan. Okay, and I hit escape there. Let me do that again. It's probably better that you just use the mouse wheel to zoom, and then use the mouse wheel, like press and hold it, and then you can drag it around. That's just my habit. It's what I do. But this little shaded circle here, what I need to do is I need to make it larger. So I need to make it bigger so that I can get the bloodstain inside. Okay, something like that. And I can also use, now I'm holding down the control key, or you can hold down the shift key, and it has the same function. But the other thing that I can do is I can zoom out. So if I just use the mouse wheel, the image zooms out, and I can get it inside of the circle. And then I'm just going to click here. Okay, now you'll see that it's created a stain for me, but it's not exactly fitting the way that I want. So what I typically do is I have to adjust this manually anyway. So I'm going to hit escape, and then I'm going to click on the actual stain. And a couple of things that I'm going to do here is I'm going to take the slider here for transparency, and I'm going to turn it all the way down, or just make it very, very low. And the reason is I'll be able to see the edges of the bloodstain a bit better. So there's controllers here now. There's this controller in the center where I can move it around. There's a controller on the sides that I can adjust the width of the bloodstain ellipse, and one here that I can adjust the length. There's rotation here, so that adjusts something called the gamma angle. And then there's this line that's coming from up here. So this tells me what direction the bloodstain came from. And so you need to know which way the impact was coming from. And that's, there's some clues on the bloodstains which you can tell. Now, if it's not coming from the same direction, or you want to flip it, there's a button here. You can just flip the direction, or I can just hit the letter F. And when I hit the letter F, it goes to down. So the line tells you where the bloodstain came from, okay? Tells you where it came from. So let's go ahead and change this. I'm going to put this back over the stain like this, and I'm just going to make a little adjustment here, and I'm not going to go too crazy, okay? I'm going to go something like this, and again, you can tweak this until you're blue in the face, but for the purposes of what we're doing, that's going to be okay. And so that was the semi-automatic one. Let me do that one more time. So I would go up here like this. I'm going to hit the edge detection. You see I got this big circle. I'm going to click. Okay, and it creates a bloodstain. It's not the best. It's just quick and dirty. The direction is correct, but I need to make some changes here. So I'm going to go down. I'm going to adjust the gamma angle, and then I'm going to adjust this, make it thinner, and I think it needs to be a little bit longer. Okay, like something like that. Okay, just kind of quickly without doing too much effort. So both of those are where, you use the edge detection tool. It quickly puts a bloodstain down. Now, I like to do manual, and the reason is I just find it's pretty quick. And since I'm going to be adjusting most of it manually anyway, it's not a big deal. And that's this first one here, draw droplets. If I click on it, what you do is you start by clicking on the leading edge of the bloodstain. So the start point is here, and then you drag back for the length, and you click again. And then you adjust the width. Okay, so you can just drag the mouse and you click, and then you adjust the width. So you can now, tweak more, make some adjustments here for the width and that sort of thing. So let's say I'm going to keep that. That's how you would do it manually. So you see, it doesn't take a lot more effort. It doesn't really save you a whole bunch of time by doing it automatically. Now, if the bloodstains are very well formed, high resolution, the edge detection works pretty well. But again, I just find that I always have to make like little tiny tweaks. So it's a kind of cool tool that, gets you someplace maybe a little bit faster. But yeah, I like this, doing it this way, like this. It's just the manual marking tools. So that's this first image. And when I'm ready, actually, let me do a couple more here. So this stain here, I'm not going to include. This one here is a little rough at the bottom. Not the best. I could include this one here if I wanted to. You can see it's kind of distorted and it's sort of lengthy here. There's been some blood that's pooled at the bottom, so not the best. And I know some people are probably going to argue with me about whether or not I should put this in. And it is an arguable point, so I agree. But let's just put it in there for the sake of this tutorial. Something like, let's say something like this for now. Okay, not the greatest, but it's good enough. So we're going to leave that there. You can see the direction of these tend to go in the general direction, the same direction. Of course, this one here, you can see is off a little bit from the others, but we're going to leave it there anyway. Okay. Sometimes you're stuck with these kinds of things, and maybe there could be an adjustment I could make a little bit that way, but it looks like it goes this way. So I'm going to leave it there for now. And, now what I'm going to do is you'll see the photo. All I need to do is just close this window. Okay. Now in 3D, if I go back here, you'll see that I start to get these lines. Now there's a little sort of I don't know if it's a bug really inside of FARO Zone 3D, but it's just kind of a weird thing that when you adjust the transparency of the actual blood drops, it changes the transparency of the trajectories that are coming out of the wall here. So I'm going to click back on here, go into the edit droplets, and you'll see my transparency is kind of low. I'm going to increase these. Actually, sorry, that's the image. I have to actually go to the actual stain. So let me click on one of these. And now when I make this more solid, and I close this, you'll see the lines become more solid as well. So it's kind of a little weird thing. I'm not sure why it does that. Maybe if the programmers watch this, maybe they'll be able to fix that. So we've got this one image. Let's do another image. And when I click on this right now, it's getting confused. It's saying, hey, did you want the actual photo or did you want this trajectories with the results of the analysis? And you can see here, this little ellipsoid shape that's at the bottom, that is the start of the sort of real-time analysis. Every time that I add a new bloodstain, it's starting to calculate the area of origin and sort of the results here. So I'm going to ask for the actual photo. I'm going to double click on that. And now it's selected and the properties come up, and I have to go in and mark the bloodstains again. So it's the exact same thing. I'm going to click on this little edit droplets and I'll get the same window. I'm going to maximize that just to make it easier. And you can see on this one, I've got a lot more bloodstains. So what I'm going to do is I'll mark a few of these. I'm not going to mark a lot just because it'll make the video kind of redundant, but I will mark a few here. So I'll mark this guy here, maybe something like this. Okay, and again, I'm going to turn this transparency down so I can see through. And I am going to do this quickly. There is a shortcut here, and what you can do is use the space bar to repeat the last command. So I'm going to hit space bar. I'm going to click, I'm going to drag, and you'll see that I can quickly get some bloodstains here like this. Okay. And do the same thing here. I'm going to go back again. I have to be very careful because all the bloodstain people are going to be saying, you didn't mark these bloodstains properly, but I'm just going fast, so I don't bore the heck out of the people here. Let me do a few more. You know, one thing that is helpful is if you have bloodstains which are well spread out. Okay, so the farther that these things are apart, the better it is for your analysis. What you don't want to do is pick a few stains that are very close together. I believe you're better off choosing a few stains which are far apart from each other than having a lot of stains that are close together. And that just has to do with the way that the area of origin is calculated and the fact that, you know, triangulation from wide angles of separation are very helpful. Okay, it'll help your analysis. So let me see here. I've got a few stains here. I could mark some of these others, but I'm gonna leave those. Okay. Okay, so I've marked all the stains that I want to do. Like I said, there's more to be done here, and you should really take a lot of care when you're doing these types of things with the blood stains, which ones you choose, where they are, and that sort of thing. Okay, so this was just a quick video more about the process inside of FARO Zone 3D. But I'm completed here, so I'm going to finish, and I'm going to zoom out now. Okay, so what you'll see here is if I look at this from different perspectives, okay, you'll see that I can see this little cross here. And actually, I'm going to make an adjustment here because I don't like the transparency. I'm going to really make it dark here. So I got to go back to the image. I'm going to click, I got this bloodstain here. I'm going to make it solid like that. And this should, there we go. Now I can see the lines are a lot more solid here. So you can see I've got this little ellipsoid shape and I've got this cross. Okay, so if I click on this, I now get the properties for the area of origin analysis, which is all this stuff here that I'm looking at. So it gives me the position of that little X, okay, the little crosshair, or sort of the point of origin, the X, Y, and Z coordinates of where this falls. Now, it's important to note that you do calculate a point of origin, but we know that when we make an impact, it's not from a specific point, okay? It happens over a region of space, which is not just even two-dimensional, but even three-dimensional. So when we say it's the point that we've calculated, we have the understanding that there is a region of space. And so this little ellipsoid, this little egg shape that's in the middle there, I can make that a little bit more solid there. What this is telling us is what the standard deviation is between these lines of intersection. So when we look at these from different angles, you'll see that some are pretty good, some are not so good, right? They're falling outside. But what this is telling me here is for the standard deviation in the X, in the Y, and in the Z direction, I have a 1 sigma or 1 standard deviation of 2.6 centimeters, 3.8 and 3 respectively for the XYZ coordinates. Now, that's only 1 sigma. Probably what I want to do is, for example, show 3 sigma, right? So now what that is saying is that you should get, you know, about 95% of the intersections should happen somewhere in here. And you can see I only have a couple that are outside and the rest look like they cross over, which is not too bad. Now, the other thing that you can do here is say, well, look, you know, I'm not confident with that. I want to put in a user-defined radius. And for the radius, you can change this. So, for example, I could say it's a 15 centimeter radius, so a 30 centimeter sphere. And I think that, you know, that's probably my uncertainty for something like this. And there's a number of different things that you have to consider. But basically, this is what you get. Okay, this is the basic process, which was bringing in the point cloud, taking the photographs, bringing them in, and aligning them to the point cloud data. Then once those are all done, you mark the bloodstains, and as you're marking the bloodstains, you're getting the area of origin in real time, and you can see how that pops up here. And once you're done marking everything, you end up with your result. Now, there's other things here with respect to reports and things like that. And this is kind of a useful feature here. It says a report. If I click on that, it says, do you want all the trajectories and line numbers and things like that? Let me go ahead and just print the report. And you'll see here what it does is it gives me a snapshot of what I'm looking at, and it gives me all the results from the area of origin, all the X, Y, and Z, standard deviations, positions, and things like that. And as I flip through this, I have a table with all my results, different images, different angles, and it also goes through and picks off portions of the images where I've marked the bloodstains. And so you get a whole bunch of stuff here that you can look at. So, you know, for an automated report, it's not bad, but definitely the most important is all this information up front here, okay, where it's giving me all the blood spatter report, individual bloodstains that I've marked, and of course the summary statistics that are over here. So that is pretty much it when it comes to the bloodstain area of origin. There are other things here to consider. Again, you would want to definitely consult with a bloodstain pattern analyst, somebody that knows what's going on behind the scenes, that has familiarity with this sort of type of analysis, because there are some things that you have to be careful about when you're reporting. But in terms of the mechanism and what it is that you're doing inside of FARO Zone 3D, that's pretty much it. Very, very powerful tool. And although I've done it on just a simple wall here, you could do it on 2 walls, you could do it on 3 walls, you could do it on very complex shapes or different types of objects, even if they're curved or whatever. There's a lot of opportunities by using this particular method. So that's it. Thanks very much, everybody. Thanks for watching, and hope you learned something, and we'll see you next time. Bye-bye.